The sky over Isaiah and Judah Jai was something out of a nightmare. Above the downpour, the towering clouds strobed with internal lightning bursts, revealing massive, tumbling grey and white structures. Sudden, terrifying silver veins of lightning stuttered back and forth between the thunderheads. A bright bolt ripped down through the sky and into the ruins of San Quentin with a crack that rivaled any heavy artillery. Its echo shook the air. "Fuck," Isaiah said, as he pictured the next strike hitting the steel tank's hull full on and flash frying all of them. The rain was near blinding. Isaiah imagined this was what it would feel like to round Cape Horn on some Spanish man of war, mainsail blown full, sheets overhauled. He moved carefully along the center line of the tank, hyper-aware of the massive treads grinding forward on either side of him. Slipping and falling, getting an appendage caught up in the steel treads, was a certain way to a violent end. He could picture the tread seizing his boot, yanking him forward, dragging him the length of the tank, then pulling him down and under, only to come back up again at the rear, a raw, meaty mess. Judah Jai came just behind him with a Lewis gun. As they reached the ass end of the tank, sitting on stanchions across the width of the tank was a wooden unditching beam. Isaiah settled behind it as Judah joined him. Isaiah shielded the rain with his hand, staring back into the storm. He saw them. It looked like a handful of fireflies, bobbing through the black night, barely glowing in the rain. Isaiah knew they were torches borne by men on the run. Judah rested the Lewis gun bipod on the wooden beam and checked the action. He took a bead on the torches. "Hold on a minute. Gonna give these motherfuckers something to think about." Judah nodded. Isaiah unslung the Mauser. He leaned it against his shoulder and sighted over the grenade launcher. He thought about Arthur's advice on the kickback. Fuck. He slid the butt end under his arm and set it against the lip of the rear roof hatch. He aimed toward the middle of the flickering orange globes and pulled the trigger. Bam! The bullet spun through the rifled barrel. It struck the grenade dead center and kicked back hard, slamming painfully up into Isaiah's armpit as it drove the metal puck out of the launcher. The grenade hurtled back through the rain, arcing gently as it began to shed momentum, pulled by gravity back toward the earth. When it struck in the midst of the men hunting Judah Jai, it exploded in a sudden, violent orange burst of shrapnel. One moment, Finbar was running flat out. The next, he was face down in saturated mud, spitting gritty dirt and rainwater, ears ringing from the explosion. He looked behind him and saw a torch lying on the cobblestones, sputtering out to blackness. Lightning struck somewhere close by, and he felt the vibration of the thunder shudder through him. The flash lit up his companions. The image only lasted a quarter second, but it stayed in his mind. Adolphe was huddled in a ball behind Finbar, screaming. Finn could not tell if he had been hit. 6 of his men were definitely dead, mouths and eyes open and frozen, bright blood where their bodies caught shrapnel that might otherwise have found Finbar. At the rear of the strewn bodies, Donnie was on his hands and knees, forehead pressed against the ground. Finn looked ahead to where he'd last seen the tank. He saw a thick muzzle flash. Time stood still Then a magnesium flare burst in the air and showered burning silver down onto him. He saw another muzzle flash from the tank and heard the bullets cut the surrounding air. Then the sound of the Lewis gun roaring in Judah's hands brought Finn fully back to the here and now. Finn dove into the drainage ditch beside the road and was immediately yanked downstream by its rip as the flooding ditch tried to pull him under. He reached out instinctively with his ruined hand and screeched in pain when the nerves reminded him there was nothing remaining but raw stumps where fingers had been. He managed one deep breath, which pulled in nearly as much rain as air. Then the current dragged him under and bounced him along the drainage ditch toward the canal, bridge, and tank. Finn desperately wanted to cough the rainwater out, but he knew from his brother's tutelage in Kildare's canals that the moment you created a vacuum, water would try to fill it, and once your lungs were topped with liquid, you were good as dead. He spun his body so his legs were ahead of him. He dug his heels into slick mud, slowing his momentum, then pushed himself up, breaching the surface. He managed to get half a breath in, nearly choked on it as he stifled a coughing fit. Then his feet lost purchase and he was dragged under again. His rear end and lower back bounced off something jagged, but he kept his scream inside his head. He stabbed out with the kukuri and dug it into the clay, holding fast to the hilt as it found purchase. Finn pulled with all the remaining strength he had. His body stretched long, sucked by the flow of water. He twisted over and dug his toes into the clay, and half a step at a time, he fought his way back toward the kukuri handle he had embedded into the bank. When he reached it, he stood, yanking the blade out of the ground and dragging himself out of the central torrent, fighting up the side of the culvert and onto the berm above it. He fell forward into the road. He saw the tank 20 yards from him, a third of the way across the bridge, spitting bullets back toward his men. Finn dodged the rounds and lost the kukuri as he scrambled back into a narrow sanctuary against the bridge's parapet. He lay on his side, pressed against the cold, wet stone wall, coughing, weeping, staring up at sheets of rain and a strobing sky, all hope lost. When Isaiah's grenade detonated, Donnie McMaster's decision was made for him. He had been comfortably running last in line, just behind Adam. He heard the tank's engine and wondered what the heck it was. He had seen plenty of newfangled gas-powered vehicles in his brief lifetime and had developed a love for all things mechanized by internal combustion. But this was the loudest one he'd ever heard. Lightning flashed, revealing the rear end of the green metal monster and its fast-spinning steel treads. Donnie's breath caught. He wondered what god-darn good a bayonet would do against something like that. And his wondering mind slowed his pace. The 7 men who had been just barely ahead of him quickly gained ground on Finn and Adolf, and Donnie found himself slowing to a jog, far at the tail of the ragged column. Dumb fucking luck was, again, Donnie McMaster's finest pal. Isaiah's grenade went off at dead center of the group. Donnie skidded to the pavement. The 6 men in the middle were killed instantly. Matthias Nilsson's corpse directly in front of Donnie, and the men just behind Adolf and Finn took shrapnel in their fronts and backs respectively and went down hard. Donnie was completely untouched. He sat up in shock, checking his chest for blood, blinking in the rain. He saw the flare explode above Finn and watched the Irishman slide off the road, disappearing under a torrent of white and brown water, dragged off down the ditch toward the canal. He saw Adolf on the ground, weeping. Then machine gun bullets were skipping in as fast as the rain. Untouched Donny wanted to remain untouched. He dragged himself up and across the road, stumbling to his feet. Another flare burst above them. Adolf's rolling eyes caught his. And then they were both up and running for the cover of a side street that angled northeast, away from the tank and its murderous roar. Donny ran through the pouring rain, leaving the dead, the tank, and the machine gun bullets behind, feet pounding on slick cobblestones. After what felt like a mile, but was more likely a quarter of that distance, he slowed, wincing on his bad hip, winded. All adrenaline gone, the pain had returned, and he was ready to surrender. He bent at the waist and tried to catch his breath as Adolf caught him. Adolf's breath was heaving too. He squatted and planted his palms on the cobbles. He wanted to weep again, but he imagined what his father would say and choked the rest of his tears back down. Did anybody else make it? Donny stammered. Adolf did not understand a word Donny had uttered. Kein English! Verstehen Sie? Kein English! Adolf screamed. Donny shot him a sharp look. He did not like anyone to scream at him, no matter what language they were speaking. There was a long moment of silence between them. Rain poured, thunder rumbled. Then the Lewis gun began barking again, echoing across the streets. Donny and Adolf straightened as one and ran, pressing on in the opposite direction of the gunfire. Adam Gillet felt the stab and heat of the shrapnel balls as they burrowed in and burned his dead skin. He slipped on the cobbles and went down hard. It took him a moment to process the injury, and he felt like he was standing on the lip of a bottomless chasm, preparing to lean out over it until he reached a point of no return. Then he would be falling, swan diving into it, rocketing downward until his momentum reached a feverish pitch and he began to burn alive, losing his hair and eyelashes, his eyelids peeling back and giving up their precious orbs, his skin charring and stripping away, his extremities following, arms and legs blackened nub ends, as the friction of his skin against air turned him into a screaming, white-hot ball of plasma. Adam's eyes shot open. Not yet. A flare burst. Then the Lewis gun began chattering from the tank. He scanned the wreckage of Finbar's squadron. Adam saw Finbar stumble and drop into the ditch. It sucked him under and away, vacuuming him toward the bridge and the flooding canal. The two men who'd borne the brunt of the shrapnel were ruined, legs hanging on by a thread, one completely severed by the combination of ballistic metal balls and TNT. The other men Isaiah's grenade struck were bleeding out into the gutters, adding to the deluge that was trying to drown Finbar Kelly. He saw Adolf and Donny stand and dodge into the cross street to escape the MG fire. Adam pressed the wet cobbles and stood. As he began to run, an MG round smacked him in the thigh, knocking his legs out from under him. Adam pushed himself up again. There was no pain, but he could tell that something in his hamstring had been severed by the bullet. When he got to his feet and fought toward the side street, his gait was an awkward limp. He bent forward and ran as fast as his broken body could carry him, in desperate pursuit of Adolf and Donny. As the tank's treads spun them across the bridge, Judah Jai checked his fire. Isaiah reloaded the Verilite and shot another flare toward the men they had killed. He shielded his eyes, but even under the flare's glow, with a sheet of rain in the distance, it was hard to discern whether or not any of them were still moving. The tank roared across the bridge, tearing up the stone roadway as it went. Judah leaned over to Judah. Isaiah leaned over to Judah. "Back in a minute," he yelled. Judah nodded and kept his focus on the path behind them. Isaiah slung the Mauser and stuck the very light pistol in his belt. He half stood and crept back toward the nose of the tank. Lightning flashed and struck nearby. The boom of its thunder crack vibrated through him, and he smelled its bittersweet ozone scent in the air. He wondered if getting struck by lightning killed you so quick that you did not feel anything. He'd seen men shot straight through the brain pan with beatific looks on their dead faces. They never saw death coming and never knew she had paid a call. Isaiah thought lightning might do the same. He could definitely think of worse ways to go. More lightning flashed. Below the bridge span, he saw what should have been calm water in a perfectly ordered canal, instead flowing at a frighteningly violent speed, high above the man-made banks. At the cutwaters, spray exploded up and over the tank. Isaiah wondered how long the bridge would hold. He imagined the span suddenly collapsing out from under the tank's tonnage and sucking them all under. All things considered, a lightning strike would be the more merciful way to go. Isaiah reached the forward hatch and pulled it open. He slid in and shut the hatch plate. "We got all the ones I could see," Isaiah said. Li Peng nodded, pale in the beam of the flashlight, eyes intent on the dark road ahead. He looked down into the flooded canal. He felt the bridges give as they crossed and imagined its collapse as Isaiah had. When they rolled onto solid ground on the far side, Peng realized he'd been holding his breath nearly the entire time. He clutched, braked, and released the accelerator, then shifted into neutral. "Where now?" asked Peng. Isaiah molded a moment. "Y'all got plenty of rounds for them big guns?" Peng nodded. "Full complement." "Well, let's put those motherfuckers to use then. That canal's a goddamn flood, and worse by the minute, and a swimmer alive or dead that could stroke across. We drop that bridge, we maybe buy some time." Peng nodded. He clutched, shifted, then banged hard on the tank hull with his wrench. Shensu pulled his lever. The tank began to spin in a tight circle. Isaiah glanced down at Black Betty and Zichang. Both seemed to be hanging on. It may have been by a thread, but the thread had not yet been cut. Isaiah opened the hatch and pulled himself back up into the dark rain. Peng finished the 180. The Dragon's artillery guns aimed directly back at the span it had just slogged across. Donnie and Adolf covered another half block, then slowed to a spent walk. Donnie's mind was fractured. They did not know what to do. One simple job. All they had needed to do was catch the darky, kill him, bring back the head, and they would have all gotten to keep on living. Could not have been a simpler, life-saving chore, and they had failed. And now that Finbar was gone, how would they explain the failure to the Romans? Donnie knew the price of failure. They were definitely going to crucify his mother's only son. He swallowed hard and started to cry. He did not think there was any way Adolf would notice in the darkness and rain. He blinked away the tears, and in that instant, he was blindsided. Struck squarely in the ribs. His feet spun out from beneath him, and he hit the street with a grunt of pain. He rolled over onto his back and shrieked, trying to push the man on top of him away. Lightning burst above them, and Donnie ceased struggling when he saw the face of the little German sapper. Rupert Fuchs stared down at Donnie, as surprised to be on top of the American dispatch rider as Donnie was to be on the ground. More running footsteps echoed off the wet pavement. Donnie looked up as the lightning forked across the sky. Durant was the first to enter the square. Wolfgang, Jonah, Renoir, and James Cox followed. Another jagged burst bit the intersection again.
"Holy crow! Danny!"
cried James Cox.